Hello and welcome to another video. Now in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at some of the more friendly surf destinations on the planet. I guess in the surfing world it's really easy to be super negative about the crowds, over tourism, aggressive locals. It all seems like this huge doom and gloom thing that everywhere you go is just going to be really disappointing. However, there's actually a lot of places around the world that are super friendly, super welcoming. So without further ado, let's take a dive into some of these places. First up, we've got Sri Lanka. Now, when I sat down to do the research for this video, Sri Lanka was the first country that popped into my head. It's just a place that comes with a very laid back, happy sort of vibe. People there very, very friendly, if anything, too friendly. The waves are pretty mellow, and that combination just creates like a really nice vibe in all of these different surf towns. So while Sri Lanka might not have like the world-class like reefs of, say, Indonesia or Tahiti or Hawaii, the waves there are really, really fun and mellow. So I think that combination of having user-friendly waves and just happy, welcoming people just creates this really like nice environment. That said, obviously the main waves in Sri Lanka are really, really crowded. If any of you have been to Aragon Bay during the main season in July and August, you'll know firsthand that that place gets hectic with like 60, 70, 80 people out in the lineup at any one time. Obviously that's never fun, but you know, I've never seen that like extreme localism in Sri Lanka. I mean, I'm sure it does happen, but the locals seem pretty happy-go-lucky. In Sri Lanka, it's probably more of other traveling surfers that cause problems, but I think generally speaking, everywhere just attracts that kind of more laid-back, relaxed surfer rather than that like testosterone-fueled aggressive surfer that you might find in the Ments or on the other like top surf destinations. And as well, there's so many spots in Sri Lanka that they're all quite mellow but quite fun, and it's quite easy to go and find your space and get waves to yourself as well. So yeah, if you're looking for somewhere just cruisy to go, I definitely recommend Sri Lanka, especially in around that sort of Weligama, Midagama region. And if you're into like longboarding, mail riding, that kind of thing, yeah, I'd definitely start in Sri Lanka. Next up, we head to Indonesia and to Bali. Now, I talk a lot about Bali on my channel, and I know what you're thinking. Bali comes with hectic overcrowding, traffic, pollution. You know, it's not necessarily the first place you think of when it comes to like a friendly, happy-go-lucky surf destination. Despite all the crowds and all the negative sides to Bali, I just haven't been anywhere where people are that friendly and welcoming, and it just has such a warmness to it. And I find that problems in the lineup regarding like localism and aggression come from other traveling surfers rather than the actual locals. Obviously the locals are kind of dominating and getting all the best waves, which is how it should be, but they're also kind of respectful at the same time. I don't know if anyone else has found that in Bali, but it's never really like the locals who are like shouting and getting really aggressive with people. It's actually like kind of the opposite way around, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, I think that comes like in and out of the water. The people there are just really, really nice. I don't know if it's like a cultural or religious thing that translates into surfing. I just find it every time I go back, all the local people I meet are just amazing. And although the main spots in Bali are obviously really, really crowded, the ones that we all know about, there's loads of other waves you can go and surf to yourself if you know where to look. Just don't ask me where they are. So just next to Bali, we've got Lombok. And while Lombok is very different in terms of sort of culture to Bali, and it used to actually have a very bad reputation for being quite dangerous and not a nice place to go particularly, but in the Kuta Lombok region, especially in that sort of pocket, it's kind of undergone a transformation, and there's sort of a whole new like surf town popped up there. It's a really, really cool place. It's got beautiful beaches, really nice surrounding coastline. It doesn't quite have that same like warmth and welcoming vibe as Bali, but that said, the people there are really, really friendly, and the whole place is kind of set up with like surf infrastructure, if that makes sense. So the whole place is set up around taking traveling surfers to the waves, you know, which I don't personally love all the time. But if you're going there, especially as sort of an intermediate, you're gonna go and meet with local like surf guides, photographers and boat drivers and stuff, and they're gonna take you out, get waves, and obviously they're gonna be quite nice and friendly to you because obviously you're paying them, but it's quite like a nice environment if you're after that sort of thing. That said, the waves that they're taking you to are crowded, but there are other waves that you can surf. But then in town as well, it's just quite like a nice, there's literally 2 or 3 different streets with a few sort of hotels, restaurants, some nice cafes and surf shops on there. And yeah, it's generally quite a nice place just to hang out. Next up, we've got Tahiti. Now, obviously we've just had the Olympics in Tahiti. I've never actually been there myself, but from everything that I've heard, it's a very friendly and welcoming place. You kind of think of it as to be like this sort of sketchy, uninviting place like Hawaii, but I think it's actually very, very different from what I've heard. Please let me know if you've actually been there. They seem to have a much more welcoming approach to traveling surfers. Now, I've only seen this sort of in videos at Chopa and stuff where the locals come out, shake hands with everyone, meet and greet everyone. Obviously, they welcome in the traveling surfers every year. I'm not sure if it's like that, you know, just for anyone and everyone who's coming. And obviously, they're not going to do that at like their secret spots, which is obviously fair enough. But yeah, it's quite a refreshing thing to see compared to what you might have in these other more like territorial, localized destinations around the world. Next up, we head to South America, and specifically to Brazil. Now, this one might come as a surprise to many of you because Brazilian surfers kind of have that reputation of being really aggressive and hassly. But to be honest, I've spent 2 months in Brazil and found the experience to be like the total opposite. Just thought Brazil had such a cool vibe to it. Like, people were really friendly, really welcoming, and just everyone was like really stoked and like enthusiastic about surfing, which in other places around the world, you kind of get this sort of pessimistic like negativity around surfing where it's almost like a chore. But most people that I met in Brazil were like really fired up to go surfing, even if the waves were really shit. I found Brazilians to be like that in the water and on land. And although in these spots there's lots of people surfing, I never saw like any aggression and localism or like aggro-ness there. I'm sure there are spots in Brazil that are really localized. As with all of these places, you know, you can have good and bad experiences everywhere. But yeah, let me know if you've been to Brazil and spent time there, or if you're from there. The reputation that it has is definitely unfair. You know, once you've gone there and had a few fun waves and met the people, definitely change your mind. Obviously in Brazil as well, there's like a little bit of a language barrier, so I couldn't like fully enjoy it. I definitely need to brush up on my Portuguese before I go back, but it's definitely a place I'd love to go back to. Next up, we've got Costa Rica, and I guess Costa Rica is like the OG friendly, welcoming surf destination. It's like the safest and most sort of go-to Central American destination. It has been for like the last 40-50 years. It's also like the most westernized, so very Americanized. They use US dollars and colones there. And yeah, obviously the famous saying, the pura vida lifestyle, I think that translates well from land into the water as well. I never saw much localism in Costa Rica. Obviously I'm kind of surfing the famous spots where locals are just kind of getting the waves and stuff. For the most part, like most of the beaches like Santa Teresa, Dominical, those kind of places are really like mellow and laid back. Like I never saw any localism there. The only place I really did see it was Pavones, but even then the vibe was like pretty friendly. The locals were just getting their waves and sort of making a point of it, but that's fair enough, you know, locals on the best waves is how it should be. But for the most part on land, I found people really friendly. It's quite like a happy environment. There's lots of other travelers and it's set up around that as well. You know, in these main surf towns, there's a lot of surf infrastructure, especially in Santa Teresa and Tamarindo. These sort of famous places, they're set up with like surf guides and surf schools, nice accommodations where the people are very nice to you, very friendly. And yeah, Costa Rica as well, although it's very touristy and there's a lot of people and it's very expensive, very Americanized, they do quite a good job of like looking after it. So there's a lot of untouched jungle and pristine beaches there still. So yeah, I think it's just a really cool, easygoing place to head to. Next, we've got El Salvador. So sticking in Central America, El Salvador, really cool place. I found everyone I've met there have been pretty friendly and welcoming, both on land and in the water. Again, like Costa Rica, now it's kind of got that reputation and fame and it's marketed as surf city, so it's very crowded. There's a lot of people surfing, but it's kind of set up so you've got this whole like surfing world there, you know, of like surf schools, surf guiding, surf camps and accommodations. And obviously that's got two sides to it, you know. On one hand, it brings a lot of money into the place, provides jobs and opportunities and creates better lives, I guess, in some ways. But then on the other side, you've got like the crowds and potentially pollution, things like that. But I think generally speaking, all the people in El Salvador are really, really warm and welcoming. Again, I've not been able to tap into it fully because Spanish is not amazing. And because there's so many waves and so many spots there, everywhere is crowded, but everyone's kind of getting waves, so it's almost like it doesn't matter. That said, you can still have frustrating surfs there, and especially when like Punta Roca's good, you know, the locals are out there like dominating. So you definitely have some frustrating surfs, but I've found nowadays the general vibe there with the Surf City name and its reputation is generally pretty good. Last but not least, we've got Sayulita in Mexico. Now, Mexico's a funny one because I found the people there really, really friendly, and I absolutely love Mexico, but it's definitely a place that comes with a lot of localism, especially down south in Oaxaca. Sayulita in Nayarit is a bit different though. I mean, I'm sure there's places around there that are localized and you get it a bit. Generally, I've found that town and the sort of waves around it to be pretty easygoing, pretty mellow. I guess it doesn't receive swells to the same magnitude of the places down south, and it's a bit less serious, you know. A lot of the spots are better for longboarders and mal riders. There are shortboard spots as well, but it's generally like a friendlier environment than like the more serious waves. When you get that more like mellow wave longboard sort of crowd, it's always like more enjoyable than like the more serious point break hollow waves where, you know, surfing goes from this like really fun, enjoyable pastime to this hectic, aggressive, really stressful time. And that's, I guess, yeah, that's just kind of how it is. And yeah, Sayulita is definitely on the easygoing, more longboard side of that. And it's quite a cool town as well, you know. I quite like the vibe to it. It's a lot of music, a lot of things going on, like a lot of happy faces and things like that. So it's quite a cool little place. I don't know if I could live there, but it's quite cool to pass through. So yeah, they are some of my top picks for the world's most friendly surf destinations. Now, obviously, you can have good and bad experiences like in and out of these places, but in my experience, these places for the most part are pretty friendly, pretty welcoming. But yeah, please don't take this too literally. It's just my opinion. So yeah, let me know of your experiences. I'd love to hear your stories, good or bad, from these places. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe as always, and thank you for the support. For now, it's goodbye from me, and I'll see you in the next episode.